Hey everyone, Leo with Dreaming Tree, and today we're putting together our beautiful fairy lilies. Now it's been quite some time since we've done any sort of floral centerpiece or arrangement. Actually can't really think of the last time we did. It's been a while. And this one is actually pretty simple, probably one of the easier ones in this bundle. So let's just jump right in here, and we're gonna start off by putting together the various sections for the little planter that our flowers are ultimately going to go into. So as you can see here in front of me, I've done a little bit of pre-prep. These two sections here are the main sections of our planter. As you can see on one side, I've already put the panels in place. So the key thing here is just to make sure, and you can lay it out like I have it here in front of me, that you alternate the panels here. So we've got a solid one with the design. Here we're going to do a solid one, and here we're going to do one with the design. Okay, so just make sure you do that. And there's one little overlay for this piece that has a little cutout, and it's these two little pieces here that we've actually cut out of a gold foil. Obviously, yours might be different. Either way, if it's the same, that's okay too. So I like to work with or start with little paper piecing things just to kind of get a feel for my glue, and then work on any non-dimensional stuff. So flat things, that's what we're going to do. Okay, now you'll notice on this piece here, there are some little markers to help you with the placement of this little element here. You can see that the little base goes right there. Then there's kind of like a little mountain shape, and that mountain shape's gonna kind of fit into that little crevice there, that little corner. And then there's also one more here that kind of curves around this round section here. So that's how you know you have it in the right position. And that's just so that we can achieve some symmetry without having to rack our brains and second guess ourselves. Okay, so we'll get that in place. Again, make sure you use those little guides to help you. And just drop it right into place. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so while that sets, I'm going to get my other panel in place. There's a few things. This is going to be very simple to do as far as putting the planter together, and the flower's not difficult at all. And we did do a little bit of inking. Now typically I don't go over inking unless we're working on some sort of arrangement where there's a new flower involved or something, in which case I'm going to go over some inking. Inking is very simple, shouldn't take long. It's actually kind of fun and really takes this to a whole nother level aesthetically. So you don't have to ink, but I highly recommend you do, as your end result will be that much more beautiful. Okay, so we're just simply taking and gluing our little panels into place. Just make sure that you get it nice and centered on this section here. There's going to be, in my case, a nice lavender or purple border all the way around on all four sides. Try to make it as equal as you can. Okay, there we go. All right, so next we're going to take and join these two sections together by simply putting some glue on one of the tabs. I'm going to start with this side here. So let's get our glue on this tab. We're going to work that glue out to the very edge. You can use your finger, a little brush, a scrap piece of paper. I like to use my finger as I feel that I have more control over where that glue goes, since I can actually feel it. Okay, so we're joining these two sections together. I'm going to press that down. I'm going to fold this over onto itself at that seam and just kind of check my work here. These edges here should be flush, and that's a good indicator that you've got it nice and properly lined up. There we go. Okay, and then next we're going to take and close it up and make it all one continuous piece here by putting glue on this tab There we go. And let's close it up. Technically, you should be able to do this flat by taking this piece and bringing it over. And that looks pretty darn good. Hold that down. I'm going to bring this over onto itself and kind of feel it out, make sure everything looks good, and it does. Okay. There we go. All right. Now, we're going to take and close this up completely. We've got 3 tabs that we need to apply glue to. So let's do that. And you can go a little bit heavier here with the glue since we've got 3 tabs that we need to apply glue to. And I want to take and spread that glue out to the very edge of the tab as well. Sometimes when you're working on multiple tabs like this, if you don't use enough glue, by the time you get back and start spreading that glue on that first tab, things are already starting to get tacky and then it won't stick. All right, so we're going to close this up, focus on aligning this side first. Get that nice and centered. Okay, and press that down. The other 2 sides should just kind of naturally fall into place if we get this front side properly aligned. Now flip it over and press down on the tabs inside. Take a look at your work, and mine's looking good. I'm going to hold this little area here a little bit longer, as it looks like it was starting to kind of pull away a little bit. Not that much, but just a little. There we go. Okay, and I think that looks good. Okay, now inside here we have this little piece. This is a little liner that is to sturdy this thing up a little bit to hide the tabs, which actually won't really see because we're going to put some foam in here as well as a bunch of moss. So essentially this is just to make the base a little more sturdy. Okay, so there's the container. Now we've added a nice little fancy lip to this, and you can see this piece starts out flat. The little scalloped edges, you want to fold those downward, and then these tabs need to go in as well. This is my texture side here. Okay, so you see how this is going to sit just like that. And there's a couple ways of doing this. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this in first and then glue these little side tabs together. I think it's just going to be easier. I don't think it really matters, but let's do this. Let's start by putting glue on just one of these tabs. You don't have to be precise with this at all. It's just to kind of hold it in place. And let's just make sure that it's nice and centered when we put it in. And you can kind of feel whether it's centered or not. Okay, and then hold that tab down. Make sure it's all the way down and flush with the top of the original container. Okay. And then, once that's mostly set, we can then take and bring these tabs up by just folding them back. And make sure you get a little bit of glue out to these little corners here, but then the rest of it isn't as vital. Okay. I'll pop that in place. Again, kind of push down on this lip here and make sure that it is in fact all the way flush up against the very edge of the original container there. That is probably the most important thing here. Okay, now let's go over to the other side and we'll get our glue on this piece right down to the very corner there. Bring that down. And again, I'm kind of pushing down on this little lip here, this surface, as I'm pushing this up against the container, just to make sure it's nice and flush and flat. Looks good. I'll peel this one back. Last one here. All the way to the corner there. And bring that down. At this point, it should be pretty flush. And technically, I don't know, I was going to say you could use your surface, but you're going to have to do this kind of in midair, and that's okay. All right, great. So now you can see that each little corner here has this little tab. And we're going to take and put some glue on each of these little tabs. That was a little much. Just kind of dab that with my finger. Then we're going to take that and tuck it behind the neighboring piece. Make sure it's nice and lined up. And just press and hold that in place until it sets. Okay, just keep on holding that. There we go. Wonderful. Now we can move over here. We'll get some glue on this guy here. Wonderful. Tuck that behind and press and hold. That looks nice. Again, pretty simple little planter. Okay, moving on over here to the next little tab. Get that on there. And tuck it behind. Line it up. And press and hold. There we go. Get whatever grip is the most comfortable for you. Just to make sure that everything is nice and aligned and is going to stick. Okay, so there's one left here. Now, I don't want to pull it back too much because I don't want to rip the other side. So in this case, I'm going to take a little scrap piece of paper and just put a little bit of glue on the corner of it and just kind of paint that glue onto the tab rather than trying to pull this thing out of the way too much and inadvertently rip it. Okay, so again, tucking that behind the neighboring piece, lining it up nice and straight, and holding until it sets. And again, less glue is better. Kind of releasing the tension in this fold here so that these sections are nice and straight. Okay, but there is the container. And now, one thing we're going to do here is we need to figure out how big or small to make our little brick of foam. So this little square inside here is about 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. So this thing that I have here is about 4 inches. Now, this is a very handy thing here. I would maybe recommend getting one. It's a little wire cutter that's used specifically for cutting foam. And it gets hot, and then it literally just slices right through the foam. Now, technically, this works better when you're using that white foam, but it still works nicely. And I'm still kind of getting the hang of this thing. Let me see how nicely that comes off. So essentially, you want to make this about 3.5 by 3.5. And then we can kind of take a little bit off the top. Because we don't want it that tall. And there it goes. Okay, so we got it at about 3.5 now. So you can see how nicely that fits in there, but that's obviously too tall. So looking at it, I'm going to take off about 1 inch. Okay, I'm going to take off about 1 inch or so. And I've really stretched this wire out. I have to get a replacement on it. You kind of just want this thing heats up. It's, you know, it's got a AC cord connected to it. The wire gets hot, and then it literally just slices through the foam like butter. Okay, I think that's probably good because we are going to put some moss in here, and might as well just do that now real quick. Get it out of the way. We'll just get it ready for our flowers. Now we still have a little base that we need to construct for this, but I'm just kind of taking things one step at a time here and enjoying the process. This is where it gets a little messy. Okay, and what I would suggest doing is kind of taking some of this and kind of jamming it into the corners here, just to get it to really stick. And then, let me see here. Yeah, you know what? We may need to take off a little more, actually. I'm going to take off about another 1/2 inch. Yeah, so you could technically do this with like a little saw, like a craft saw, but it tends to get pretty messy because this stuff kind of just breaks apart and crumbles all over the place. And that's okay. I mean, if you got a little, I always keep a vacuum in my craft room and just kind of clean up. I wish I cleaned up after every project. I don't. I'm not that cool. I'm not that tidy. I have so much other stuff going on, but when stuff like this occurs, I do like to kind of clean as I go. It's because I want to be breathing all this stuff. Okay, so anyway, you get the idea here. We're gonna pack this with some moss. I'm just gonna kind of wrap it around a little bit to get the base layer to stay in there. And then obviously we can dress it up with additional moss to kind of fluff it up a little bit more, give it a little bit of volume. Most importantly, you wanna make sure you hide the foam in there so you don't see it. It should camouflage pretty well. Okay. So that's a good start. And then if you do, what I typically do is I'll kind of overstuff it wherever I think it needs it. And then I'll just take some scissors. And if I have little stray ones just kind of hanging off there that are unsightly, I'll just trim them off. Give it a little haircut. It just helps kind of, if you try to pull on things, you may end up pulling more stuff out and making a huge mess. So you literally just grab some scissors and just give it a little haircut. Just get rid of some of that stuff that's hanging off too much and hiding our beautiful paper. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's put the little base of this thing together. It's very simple. Put this off to the side for a second, let it set. And I got a nice little mess on my desk here. It's okay. I'm not really making stuff unless we're getting a little dirty, right? Okay. All right, so here is the base. And for our veterans here, you've made stuff like this before. So I like to take this side and move it out of the way. These triangular tabs are our focus here. We're going to be applying glue to the little triangular tabs here. Okay, so we'll start on the side that actually has the large lid connected to it. Get your glue on that little tab. I'm going to hit that with my finger and then take it and tuck it behind the neighboring wall and press and hold that down until it dries. Okay, so our first tab is in place. Can move over to the next little triangular tab. Again, simply put a little bit of glue right on that tab. I like to kind of spread that glue out a bit and tuck it right behind its neighbor. Line it up and press and hold. Okay, so we've got that side constructed. Working on this side now. And then we've got 2 more tabs. And we just need to close it up. Kind of like we did with the actual planter. I'll show you what I mean here in a second. Okay, next tab. Spread that glue out. Tuck it in behind this wall here and press and hold. Okay, there we go. And last but not least, one more little triangular tab. And tuck that tuck that behind, line it up, and press and hold. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. And next, we're going to take and flatten these tabs out a little bit and apply our glue. So again, with this, don't hesitate to throw a little extra glue on there, since we have 3 tabs that we need to take care of here. And I'm going to spread that glue out nice and thin out to the very edge of the tab, like so. You can already tell. Now this is because my glue bottle is starting to dry up a little bit. That this glue is starting to get tacky already, and it's okay. All right, so we're going to close this lid up, focus on getting it aligned with this side here, the side opposite of the side that it's already hinged at, okay? And then if you need to, these little walls on either side, if you need to kind of nudge them in a little bit, you may have to do that, and that's fine. And then just kind of continue running your finger along the very, very edge. That's where we really want it to sit nice and flush. And just hold that for a moment. And give that a few extra seconds to set. And we're going to check our work here to make sure everything is nice and flat and flush, and it is, except for right there. And maybe, just maybe, I can just hold it and it'll stick. And if not, well, that's all it needed. It was just a little extra touch there. Okay, looks good. Now we have this piece here. That's just to kind of give this a little two-toned effect. Should fit perfectly on this side here. So let's get our glue on the back of this section. This little overlay. Try to get that glue out to the edges as well. Like that. And pop that right on there. Make sure you get it nice and aligned. There we go. And just hold that down until it's fully set. And then we can begin working on the flowers once we glue the actual planter down to the base. You want to check your work here and make sure everything looks nice and flat. And if you have a little area that is maybe peeling up, just like we did before, you can grab a little scrap piece of paper and throw a little bit of glue right on the very corner, very edge, and just paint a little bit of glue in there and press that down, and that'll look nice and flat for you. Okay, so our base is done. Now this guy here, you're going to glue this down to the actual base. It's going to be centered. Okay, so what I would suggest doing here is actually applying glue to the bottom of this, so you know exactly where to put the glue. If you were to try to guess by putting it on the base itself, you're probably going to guess wrong. So we just want to keep it on the actual base here. Okay. And again, do your best to get that nice and centered. If you have to kind of, well, I guess you really can't look from above because the lip will kind of hide it. So you want to try to get it from one angle and then turn it around, make sure it looks good from the other side as well. I'd say that that looks pretty darn centered. And there we go. Okay, so there's our beautiful little planter. You can see it from this camera angle here. Looks great. Okay, we've got our moss in there. We're gonna let this sit for a little bit while we work on our flowers. Now, I've already put together 2 of the 3 flowers, and I will go through the assembly of one of them with you. And if you need, you can certainly rewind. I think after you do the first one, you pretty much get it. Okay, so this is our beautiful fairy lilies here. can see how nice they look. And I'll actually, just for the heck of it, I'm going to pop this in there. I just want to see what it's going to look like possibly when it's done. Okay, obviously we're going to need to trim the stems. They're way too high right now. But before we get into the assembly, I'm going to go over a couple little inking techniques here. Now, with each flower is going to require 3 of these long leaves and 3 short leaves. Okay, so you're going to have a total of 9 of these and 9 of these. And then for the actual flower itself, boy, I think I lost some pieces here. We've got this set of petals and this set of petals. There's a number 1 here and a number 2 here. Okay, so we're going to need that. And then we're going to need, there's 2 more pieces here. Where are they? Here they are. Okay, so we have the little stamen piece, and then we have some little pistils. Okay, so this is what you're going to need for each of the flowers, and there's a total of 3 of them. Okay, so number 1, number 2, 3 long, 3 short, stamen, and some pistils. Now, as far as the inking for the leaves, I just used a kind of a blue-green. I did this by hand, actually. I didn't even use my tool on any of these. Literally just grabbed some ink and just ran it across the very edge of each of these while lightly hitting the surface. Okay, just a very simple, quick little stroke. And then you can actually take it and actually hit the very edge if you want to darken the edges a little bit. It's up to you. That is my technique. No wrong way of doing it. If you want to do it differently, you're more than welcome to. And you can see here, sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually kind of tint the tips a little bit darker than the edges, just to kind of give it a little bit of a gradient effect. You can see that. Okay, same thing with the small one. Just go around the edges all the way around, up and down. Okay, now as far as the flowers go, I'm looking at, there's a variety of different kinds of fairy lilies. And I know when Ron designed these, I'm sure he's been a flower guy for a long time, so he knows what they look like. But with this one, what we're going to do is we're going to ink the centers. Okay, so I'm literally just using my my felt applicator, getting a little bit of ink on there, and then the best way I found to do this was to actually go kind of heavy with the ink initially. I'm going to start by just making circles. I'm going to focus, I don't want to go more than about halfway up the petal. So with just little circles here, I'll start applying that ink onto this little section. And as I get more comfortable, I can kind of push down a little bit harder to get more of that to stick. What I'm trying to accomplish here is to not create a fine line, a designating line where you can see that it starts and stops. I'm trying to blend it so that it just kind of looks like a nice gradiated effect. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm going for. Now you're very welcome to go online and study and look at all of the different varieties of fairy lilies and decide how you want yours to look. Okay, because I've seen they're probably hybrids. I've seen some with some really lovely streaks, which I kind of experimented with a little bit. Didn't really like the outcome, so I kind of went back to this. But yeah, and then eventually I do want to, you don't have to get it all the way down to the bottom because most of that is going to be hidden in a shadow once we actually construct the flower, so no need to waste your ink all the way down here. I would at least kind of bring it up to about halfway What about there? You don't have to go all the way to the bottom. Save your ink. Okay, it's just little circles. And that's looking nice. Okay, so I did that to all the flowers. Now the pistils and the stamen, we don't really have to do anything with as far as inking goes. Now, to begin shaping this, okay, well, these petals are ultimately going to be coming out this way, like so, okay? But this part is gonna be wrapped around like this. And we're gonna take this little tab here. Now I'm gonna use my dowel to kind of cup each of these so that when I do glue this together, it'll be more round instead of like triangular. Okay, I'm just trying to cup this whole section here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna put glue on the back of this little tab and glue it to the inside of itself. Okay, so go ahead and get some glue, pop it on that little tab. I'm gonna go nice and thin with the glue, just kind of spread it out, thin it out, and pop it inside. You don't want to see the tab. And hold that down. Now if you need to, maybe grab a smaller dowel and use that to push that tab down up against your finger. Okay, so the tab is inside. Give that a few seconds to set. And while you're holding it, try to kind of round it a little bit so it's not so triangular, because initially when you glue it together, it's got a bit of a triangular shape. Try to make it a little bit more round. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing here. I'm gonna begin by just kind of cupping each individual petal. This is a 3/8 inch dowel. Okay, and then I'm gonna cup the whole thing. We're gonna take some glue, apply it to the side of the tab. I'm just gonna hit that with my finger, and then glue it to the inside of itself, like so. Okay, press and hold that. I'm gonna grab my dowel and just push in or push up against my finger, just to kind of squeeze it between my finger and the dowel, and that's gonna help it set a lot faster. Okay. So now a key thing here is to remember which one had the little 1 and which one had the 2 on it. Okay, this one has the 2 on it, I believe. You want to make sure that you keep that in mind because they do go in a certain order. Okay, and I want to double check that. Yep, and this is my number 2. And that is my number 1. Okay, so remember the number 1 is going to go first, and then the number 2. So that's my 1. Okay, so now we can begin constructing the actual flower itself. Now these are the little stem wires that we use. They come in this package. I got this at Michael's, and yeah, that's that. So this is paper wrapped, which gives it a little bit of volume, nice and thick. Now we don't need this whole thing, so I'm gonna fold it in half, and then I'll just chop it right in the center. Now what I did, depending on how thick your wire is, for the stamen part, what I noticed on mine, now if yours isn't as thick as this, you should be okay. You may not need to do this, but what I did was I actually peeled off the paper at the very tip, maybe just about a 1/2 inch worth or so, because it made it kind of difficult to put the stamen pieces on. But again, if you're using a thinner wire, you can bulk it up with a little bit of floral tape. I'm still going to put floral tape around the very tip here because I want it to be green. I don't want to see any brown in there. Okay, we're just going to start by putting a little bit of floral tape right at the tip. And first step is to take our little stamen piece, and what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it around the very tip of this. Now we don't want the tip of the floral stem all the way up here. We don't want it to be visible. We're going to hide it a little bit. So right about there is probably good. Okay, so go ahead and begin just kind of wrapping it around. And if you want, grab a dowel to kind of loosen those fibers and actually keep it nice and round so that we don't crease it or fold it directly. And then what you can do, you can progressively use something thinner. In my case, actually, well, in this case, I don't think it's really, this is probably thin enough at this point. So we're going to wrap this around. Again, keep the green tip of the floral stem away from the very top here. You want it down just a little bit so it's not visible. We'll bring that in. Okay, now we're going to take, if you want, if it's easier for you, what you can do is throw a little bit of glue on here and glue that to the stem first so that it doesn't move. I find that I don't have to do that. If at any point during the assembly of this flower you need a little bit of help from glue to keep something in place, by all means, you can definitely do that. There's no rule saying you can't. But if you want to speed up the process a little bit, you can literally just go straight to the tape. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to take our floral tape and wrap it around. I'm going to bring it down first so it hits the existing floral tape, and that's going to make it stick. Okay, I'm going to straighten that out a little bit. And then I'm going to take my floral tape, starting right here just below the base. I'm going to go up until I get it to where these little stamens actually begin. Okay, we can actually flare these out now. And I just want to tape it right up to that very top, just below the actual stamen pieces here. Okay, so that looks good. That'll work. Okay, that's part one. Now next, we're going to go about an inch down. We're going to take our little petals here. Now if you want, again, I'm going to kind of wrap this around a dowel just to get it to start thinking that, hey, I'm going to be round. So we'll loosen up the fibers there and get it into a more round shape. We're going to bring this down about an inch. We want the very tips, the little circular or ellipse shaped tips of the pistils, just barely past the little stamen there. And if it's a little bit off, it's not a big deal. So again, if it's easier for you, you can take and put a little bit of glue right on the very tip here, right there. Just wrap it around onto itself and hold it there until it sets, and then wrap it. But if you're comfortable enough, you could probably skip the glue and just wrap it with the floral tape. So I have mine glued, and again, I think the location of it is fine. I might just bring it down a tad, and then we can take our floral tape. Now when you're using floral tape, don't forget to stretch it out a little bit to reveal the little tackiness that's in there, the little bits of glue. It's going to help it stick. And then we're just going to take this and wrap it just below where the actual pistils begin, and just wrap that down. Okay, there we go. So essentially, it's kind of what we're looking for. And then if you want, I'm going to definitely do this later, but you can kind of flare these out a little bit so they're not so straight as you would probably see them in nature. Okay, so there's that. And now we are ready to start putting our little petals in place. Okay, so find your number one. I'm going to double check this again, make sure that I have what I need. That's my number one. Okay, and we're just going to slide it through. And actually, before we do that, take a dowel and take and train these out. Okay, so all I'm doing here is I'm putting the petal between my finger and the dowel and kind of folding it and then running the dowel through. Okay, and then you can actually, if you want, you can use the dowel right at the very base to bend it down a little bit so that it droops more. Okay, and I noticed that this is the third one that I've done, and I think my inking on this is my favorite. Okay, so I'm just going to bring this all the way up, kind of as far as it'll go. Okay, so we do want the center stamen and the actual stem of it to be visible. We want the pistils to be visible as well. Okay, so essentially you want it to be about there. Okay, so here's where we'll go ahead and just wrap this so that it doesn't go anywhere. So I'm just kind of going up to just slightly above where it begins and then taping down a little bit. Now I'm going to tape down even more just to kind of give the next set of petals something to hold on to and grab onto. Okay. And now this is piece number 2. And before we put it on, if you want to go ahead and train these petals out a little bit, okay, we can always finesse things later on once we have everything in place. So just slide that through. And sometimes it helps because of the paper wrapping, it kind of helps to twist as you push it through. Okay, we're going to pop this all the way in. You want to offset the petals. You don't want them sitting on top of each other like this. You want them like this. Okay, and then just bring it up. I think naturally, just based on the design of the actual petals, it'll kind of, there's a point where it'll stop. It just won't go anymore. Okay. All right, so you get it up to that point where it just won't go anymore. Again, just make sure that they're offset and not fighting for light. And there we go. Now, if you want to, what you can always do is put a little bit of glue on the floral tape just below the just below the previous petal, so that when you put this up, you put that up there, it will kind of hold a little bit more than it would if you didn't. And that will be kind of setting the tone for potentially a better wrapping. When I made my first couple flowers here, I didn't do that because I mean, I don't think it's necessary, but it is helpful if you're new to this and you're unsure and you're worried about things moving, or if you're having problems with the tape and you need a little help, a little boost, then by all means, feel free to use a little bit of glue to keep things in place. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this now. And again, just slightly below the base of the set of petals there. And then just work it down a little bit. And that should hold it. Okay, so there's our beautiful flower. Looking good so far. Now we just need to put some leaves on it. Now what I did was, I think this is a 1/4 inch dowel. Just take and put the leaf between your finger and the dowel. And then I kind of do this pretty quick, but if I slow it down, basically what I'm doing is taking this, bending it forward, and then running the dowel through. And that gives us a nice curve. Okay. Now depending on where you start, it's going to change the way that curve looks. Okay, so this petal, or this leaf, is standing up a little bit more, but it's curved at the very top. So I'll show you here. Let's go here. Okay, and then I can just go real gentle up to that point. And I don't like how that looks, so I'm going to try to work that crease out. So there's one example. Now if I don't start at the top and I start at the base and I curl it, you can see the difference there. So this one's kind of standing up more. This one's drooping more. So let's go somewhere in between. Let's start here. And then I'm going to go very gently from the bottom there. And now we've got something that's somewhere in between the other two. Okay. So once we get those all trained, the first set of leaves You want to go about 3 inches, about, well, maybe 3¼ inches down from the base of this. So there's the base. 1, 2, 3, right about here, I'd say, about 3¼ Okay, so let's get our tape up to that point at least, because it's going to be tough to add tape to that later on if the leaves are in the way. So we may as well bring this down to about here. I'm going to be cutting off the bottom of this. There's no way we're going to use this entire flower. It's going to be way too long for our container. But if you're using it in a different container, then by all means, you know, you can keep the stem longer if you need to. So I'm just going to fold this like this real quick so I can get a better idea of where my first set of leaves need to go. This is where they're going to go, right about here. And again, if you want, now with this, I think it's going to be a little more difficult if you try to use glue. I'm going to take the first one and just at the very base, just kind of pinch and wrap it around the stem. Okay, I wouldn't go too high up. Just pretty much, I'd say about a finger's thickness is how much you want to wrap around the stem. And you'll notice that it kind of sticks already. So you probably don't need glue. You do want to just be quick about it as far as the wrapping. Okay, so get your floral tape ready, stretch it out, and just begin wrapping it around the stem. Okay, and I'll just do a couple wraps, rip it off, and there you go. Okay, so that's one. Now we'll take the next one, and you want to offset it so you can see here. You don't want to, you don't want to put the next leaf right behind this one. Let's go, you know, we're going to put one here, and then we'll put the other one here, just to kind of make it nice and full. All right, so just like I did the first time, you want to take the base of that and just kind of wrap it around and pinch it onto the stem. Okay, and then get your floral tape. Let me cut that off. We'll get our floral tape. And this is typically the part where I notice that you have to really pay attention as you're wrapping, because sometimes as I'm wrapping this without gluing it down first, and I really don't recommend gluing it down, it's probably not going to hold very well if you glue it down. Just wrap it with the tape, but be very careful as you get that first wrap around that the actual leaf doesn't move too much. Sometimes I've wrapped it and I noticed that it moved out of place. Okay, but that is acceptable. That looks great. Okay, so next, last green leaf, and we're basically putting these all at the same height, the base of these all at the same height. Okay, just kind of pinching it around the stem, and then I'm going to go ahead and wrap it. And again, making sure that it's staying in place as I wrap it, because it has a bit of a tendency to move around as it's doing right now. So if that happens, just unwrap it and give it another go. There we go. And if it's not exactly where you first started, but kind of in the ballpark, that's okay too. And then I'm going to actually take this and train that down a bit, and there we go. Okay, so our first 3 leaves are on, and now the next set of leaves, the small ones, find the base, okay, base of these, and you're going to go down about 3/4 inch. Okay, so roughly about here. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. Just take and pinch that around the stem, and then we're going to wrap it. Okay, let me get my floral tape ready to go here. Just like to pull some out, stretch it out, get it ready to go. And right about there is good. And we'll just take and wrap that around. Okay, so just like we did with the large leaves, we're going to try to kind of offset all 3 of these so that they make this a little bit more full. So again, you can see this one's here. You don't want to put this one right underneath it. Go to about here. Okay, so about 90 degrees away from it. All right, just kind of wrapping it around the stem. And then we're wrapping the base of this around the stem, and now I'm actually going to wrap this around the stem with my floral tape. Again, make sure that it's staying in place as you're wrapping it. And there we go. Okay, so that's 2 in place, and it just leaves 1 more. So we've got these, this one here, this one here. This one's gonna go right here, just to fill it in. Okay. And let's get that all nice and in place here. As you can see, it is kind of moving a little bit. That's okay. If it wanders off a tiny bit, not the end of the world. But there you have it. Now I'm going to just wrap this up a little bit more, go up and down a bit. And I'll bring that all the way down. Just wrap it all the way down to the bottom, make that all nice and green. Again, I'm not exactly sure yet how much I'm going to cut off, but there is your beautiful flower. And I think that's pretty much it. You can see all 3 of these together. And as you can see, they are pretty tall relative to the planter. So I'm going to be trimming the stems on these a little bit. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is we're going to take, and as far as the final arrangement goes, now I'm going to show you from this angle here, you want to get all 3 of them relatively close to the center of the planter as far as putting them in. And what you can do then, if you kind of look at it from this angle here, from the other camera, you can see how what I've tried to do is sort of create, well, spacing between these as far as height, but very subtly. So you can see, which one is it? This one here is slightly taller. Okay, we got this one up in front, and just like in a team photo, they put the tall people in front and they kind of make them squat. So this one, he's tall, but we're kind of bringing him down a little bit so he doesn't obstruct these 2 in the back. And then this guy here is slightly lower than this guy here, just to kind of create what I would consider a balanced arrangement. Okay, so that's it. That's it for this one. It's pretty simple. I hope you guys enjoyed it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add some little gold pearls to the little planter and call it a day. I think this is going to be a very fun project. Very quick and easy and beautiful, just like all of our flower projects. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the process. I love the final outcome. It's very soft, very delicate, but beautiful. If you enjoyed the video, please take a moment and visit our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. And while you're there, hit the little bell so that you get notifications anytime we release a new product, whether it be paid or free. And if you make this or anything from our new bundle, I'd love to see it, and so would the rest of our community. So head over to your Facebook and do a search for Dreaming Tree Group, or you can type in the little URL that shows up here at the bottom of your screen. But anyway, happy flower making, and as always, I look forward to crafting with you again.